Sometimes life has a way of breaking us down. We find ourselves in moments where it seems that everything we built, everything we dreamed of, is shattered right in front of us. And in those times, it's tempting to think, maybe I'm just too broken to be used by God. Maybe I've failed too many times or have too many scars. But I'm here to tell you that brokenness does not disqualify you. In fact, it may be the very thing that qualifies you to fulfill the purpose God has set for you. Look at the stories in the Bible time and again. God uses the people others overlook, the people who have been hurt, betrayed, the ones who think they have nothing left to give. God specializes in taking the broken pieces of our lives and creating something extraordinary. He doesn't wait until you're perfect. He doesn't wait until you're whole, because he knows that the strength you gain from overcoming will empower others. Brokenness is not the end, it's the beginning. When life knocks you down, when you feel shattered and scattered, it's tempting to think that your story has come to an end, that you've gone too far off course to ever get back on track. In those dark moments, everything in you may scream that you've been disqualified, that you've somehow missed your purpose, that the chapter has closed on your hopes and dreams. But what we often don't realize is that brokenness is not the closing of a chapter, it's the opening of a new one. Brokenness can be a doorway, a starting point for a transformation more profound than you ever thought possible. In our world, we're often taught to fear failure, to avoid pain, to run from brokenness. We're told that being put together is the goal and that success only comes to those who keep it all in control. But that's not how God sees it. God doesn't look at your broken pieces and turn away. Instead, he sees potential. He sees beauty in what the world might call broken. Those places in your life where you feel like you've been torn apart or left behind, those could be the exact places where God intends to start something new in you. In God's economy, brokenness is not a liability, but an asset. Your broken pieces are raw material in the hands of a creator who can mold, shape, and refine them into something greater than you can imagine. When you're broken, you're stripped of the need to maintain an image or keep up appearances. You become more open, more real, more willing to let down your defenses and be authentic. In that state, you're more available to listen, to learn, and to be led by God. Brokenness has a way of humbling us, reminding us that we're not in control, that we can't do it all on our own. It's in those places of vulnerability and humility that we're most able to receive God's guidance and grace. When we're broken, we don't have the luxury of pretending that we're strong enough on our own. And in that realization, we open ourselves up to God's strength working in us. Think of brokenness as a refining process. When raw gold is broken down and refined in the fire, it emerges pure, shining, and more valuable. In the same way, God uses our broken moments to bring out the best in us, to refine us and purify us. We might resist this process because it feels uncomfortable, even painful, but often it's through these very trials that God is working behind the scenes, chipping away what no longer serves us and revealing something beautiful in its place. Brokenness isn't meant to diminish you, it's meant to refine you, to make you more resilient, more compassionate, and more in tune with God's purpose. In times of brokenness, it's easy to feel alone, but the truth is that God is closest to us in those moments. The Bible reminds us that God is near to the brokenhearted, that he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Brokenness invites God's presence into our lives in a way that wholeness sometimes can't. When everything seems to fall apart, when you've hit rock bottom, that's often when God is waiting to meet you, to lift you up, and to guide you into a new season. Your brokenness becomes a place of encounter, a place where you can feel God's love and grace in ways you might not have if everything had gone according to your plan. So don't view brokenness as an end, but as the beginning of something deeper. Those moments of pain and struggle are not the end of your story. They're a pivotal chapter, a setup for what God is about to do next. Through brokenness, God lays the foundation for a greater purpose, one that may have seemed impossible before. Embrace those broken places in your life, knowing that they are not a sign of failure, but a doorway to transformation. You're being prepared, strengthened, and reshaped for a purpose that will bring glory to God and healing to others. God specializes in using the unlikely. When we look at ourselves or at others, we often see what's on the surface, our shortcomings, the areas where we don't measure up, the broken places that seem to make us less qualified, less capable, less worthy of being used for something great. It tends to overlook those who seem less put together, favoring those who appear strong, whole, and flawless. But God's way of choosing people is different. God has a habit of picking those who are considered unlikely by the world's standards, the ones others might ignore or dismiss, and turning them into powerful vessels for his purpose. He doesn't follow our rules or criteria. Instead, he delights in using those whom the world would least expect. Look at the stories of people God used throughout history. Time and again, he chose people who felt inadequate, people who didn't fit the mold, people with pasts that others would have seen as disqualifying. Take Moses, for example. Moses was an unlikely leader, a man with a stutter who doubted his own ability to speak. When God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses protested, reminding God of his weaknesses, his flaws. Yet God saw past all of that. He knew Moses' heart, knew the strength that lay beyond the stutter, beyond the fear, and he used Moses not in spite of his weaknesses, but because of them. Moses' perceived flaws became the very areas where God's strength shone brightest. Another example is David, who became one of Israel's greatest kings. Before his rise, David was a shepherd boy, the youngest of his brothers, the one left out of consideration when the prophet Samuel came looking for the next king. By human standards, David was the least likely candidate. He wasn't as physically impressive or as experienced as his brothers. But God saw something in David that others couldn't see. He saw a heart after his own, a heart filled with courage and faith, even if it was wrapped in the unlikely package of a young shepherd. God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the call. David's heart, his faith, and his willingness to trust God became the foundation for his remarkable journey from shepherd to king. Think about Rahab, a woman with a reputation that society would have shunned. She was considered an outcast by her community, a woman with a questionable background. Yet God chose her to play a pivotal role in the history of Israel. Rahab's courage and faith saved her family and helped the Israelites claim victory in Jericho. Her unlikely position and background became part of her story, part of what made her unique, and God used her faith to fulfill his purpose. Her story reminds us that our past don't have to define our future, and that God's grace can reach us no matter where we come from or what we've been through. This theme of God using the unlikely runs through so many stories right up to the disciples Jesus chose. These were fishermen, tax collectors, and everyday people, individuals others might have overlooked. Yet Jesus called them, trained them, and turned them into the foundation of the early church. It wasn't their qualifications or worldly credentials that made them great. It was their openness, their willingness to follow, and their belief that God could do something extraordinary through them. Jesus chose the unlikely, showing us that greatness doesn't depend on our background, wealth, or status. It depends on God's calling and our willingness to respond. God's choice of the unlikely teaches us something powerful, that his power is made perfect in our weakness. When we feel inadequate or unqualified, those are the very moments when God's power can shine through us the most. He isn't looking for perfection. He's looking for hearts that are willing, for people who will trust him to use them in unexpected ways. When we embrace this, we begin to see that our weaknesses and our flaws don't disqualify us from being used by God. Rather, they are often the very things that make us ideal candidates. God's grace shines through our vulnerabilities, and his strength is revealed in our broken places. When you feel unlikely, when you feel that you don't fit the world's standards of success or strength, Remember that God has a history of using the unlikely for great things. He sees potential where others see limitations, purpose where others see failure, and beauty where others see brokenness. You are never too unlikely for God's purpose, and his plans for you are beyond what you could imagine. Healing happens in the journey. We often think that before we can truly be used by God, we need to be fully healed, fully whole, and fully ready. But the truth is that God doesn't wait until we're perfect to begin using us. Instead, he works through us even in our brokenness, even while we're still on the path to healing. The journey itself is part of the transformation, part of the process through which God shapes us, teaches us, and refines us. Healing is not always a destination we arrive at, but rather an ongoing process that deepens as we walk with God, learning to trust him and letting him use us along the way. When we're in the midst of pain or struggle, it's natural to want a quick resolution, a way out of the discomfort, a moment when everything feels fixed, but often God uses these very moments of difficulty to draw us closer to him. In our longing for healing, we find ourselves more open to his presence, more willing to lean on his strength rather than our own. The journey teaches us patience, resilience, and faith. We start to realize that while we may not be fully healed, God is still moving, still working through us. Every step forward, every act of faith, every prayer offered in the midst of our pain becomes a testament to his grace and a vital part of our healing journey. In this journey, we often experience healing in ways we didn't expect. Sometimes God brings healing gradually, allowing us to grow and gain strength with each step. Other times, we may experience breakthroughs that give us a taste of his power and remind us that he's with us. But in both cases, healing doesn't always mean that every wound is immediately closed or that every scar fades overnight. Healing in God's hands is deeper. It's about transforming our hearts, shifting our perspective, and teaching us to trust in his plan, even when we don't see the full picture. God uses the journey to mold us, shaping our character and building resilience that will sustain us in the challenges to come. The journey of healing often brings us to a place of empathy and compassion. Through our own struggles and hurts, we gain a greater understanding of what others go through. We learn to see people not just as they appear on the surface, but as individuals who, like us, have their own battles, scars, and wounds. Our experiences of brokenness and healing give us a deeper capacity to connect with others, to extend grace, and to support those who are still in their own journey. In this way, our healing journey becomes a tool God uses to make us more effective in helping others. The empathy we gain isn't just a byproduct, it's part of our purpose, part of how God wants to work through us. As we move forward, the journey itself becomes a testimony. People don't just need to hear about our successes or the moments when everything was easy. They need to hear about the struggles, the pain, and the ways we kept going even when we didn't feel healed or whole. These moments of honesty resonate deeply with others who may be struggling in similar ways. When we share our journey, the times we fell, the times we doubted, and the moments God lifted us up, we're sharing a living example of God's grace and strength. We become a witness to the fact that healing is not always instant, but it is real and possible. Through it all, the journey teaches us dependence on God. We realize that our own strength isn't enough to sustain us, but his strength is. We learn to trust that he's guiding us, even when the way is difficult or unclear. In each step, God is preparing us, equipping us for the purpose he has set for us. The journey of healing then becomes about more than just our own wholeness. It's about preparing us to serve, to lift others up, and to walk in the calling that God has placed on our lives. It's also crucial to understand that healing is not linear. There will be times when we feel like we're moving forward, making progress, and then times when we feel like we've taken 2 steps back. These ups and downs are part of the journey. God is with us in each of these moments, using even the setbacks to teach us perseverance and faith. He's teaching us that our worth isn't dependent on a perfect record of healing, but on his unwavering love for us. Our identity is rooted in Him, not in our pain and not even in our healing. We are loved and valuable just as we are. In the end, healing happens as we walk, not as we wait. God doesn't require us to be fully healed to be effective. He simply asks us to trust Him, to take each step with faith, and to allow Him to use us just as we are. Healing in God's hands is an ongoing process, a journey that transforms us along the way. It's in this journey that we learn the beauty of His grace, the strength of His love, and the incredible truth that we can be useful, purposeful, and whole even as we're still healing. Your scars are signs of resilience, not defeat. In a world that often glorifies perfection and success, it can be easy to feel ashamed of the scars we carry. Scars may remind us of painful times, failures, or things we've lost along the way. They're often visible reminders of battles fought, whether they're emotional wounds or physical marks that remind us of our struggles. But these scars don't signify failure or defeat. They are markers of resilience, proof that we have endured and survived. Rather than covering or hiding them, we can begin to see our scars as a testament to our strength and as symbols of the lessons we've learned on our journey. Every scar has a story, and each story holds a valuable lesson. When we examine the stories behind our scars, we start to see the journey we've taken to get where we are. Perhaps it was a season of heartbreak, a period of loss, or a time when we had to fight to keep going. Each scar tells us that we have been through something hard, something that could have defeated us but didn't. Scars are like badges of honor that show we were tested but didn't give up, that we were hurt but chose to keep moving forward. They show that we had the courage to face the challenges life threw our way, and that through God's grace we emerged on the other side. It's easy to feel that scars make us damaged or less than others, but God doesn't see our scars that way. In His eyes, our scars are not blemishes, they are beautiful reminders of our resilience and our journey. God uses our scars to teach us, to grow us, and to show others what is possible through Him. Just as Jesus' own scars were visible after His resurrection, proof of the sacrifice He made for us, our scars too can be evidence of God's presence and power in our lives. They show that no matter what we've been through, we have a Savior who walks with us, heals us, and turns our suffering into strength. Our scars can become a source of empathy, a way for us to connect with and support others. When we see someone going through a hardship that we once endured, our scars remind us of how that journey felt, what that pain was like, and the comfort we received along the way. Our experiences make us more understanding, more compassionate, and more willing to reach out a hand to someone else in need. The scars we carry allow us to help others in ways we might not have been able to if we had never been through hardship ourselves. In sharing our stories, we offer others a glimpse of hope and the reassurance that they're not alone. Scars are also a source of strength. They remind us that we can survive and overcome adversity. Every time we look at a scar, we remember that we got through something difficult, and that knowledge builds our resilience for the future. When new challenges come, we can look at the scars from our past and remind ourselves, I made it through that, I can make it through this too. Our scars remind us that we have been made stronger by our experiences and that we carry within us the strength to face whatever comes next. Embracing our scars is part of embracing who we are. We are not meant to be perfect or unblemished. We are meant to be real, to be genuine, and to be ourselves. God doesn't need us to be flawless to fulfill His purpose. He uses our scars, our weaknesses, and our brokenness to create something beautiful. Our scars are a reminder that we are works in progress, that we have been shaped by our experiences, and that each one has a purpose in God's plan for our lives. They don't diminish our worth or value, they enhance it by showing that we have lived, learned, and survived. When we accept our scars, we free ourselves from the need to appear perfect or to hide our past. Instead, we can stand confidently knowing that we are enough just as we are. Our scars don't make us less, they make us more. They give us depth, character, and resilience. And when we show our scars to the world, we remind others that it's okay to have scars too, that it's okay to be a little broken, and that even in our brokenness, we are whole. So wear your scars with pride, knowing that they are a testament to your strength, your endurance, and God's unending grace. They are proof that you have walked through the fire and come out refined. They don't define you, but they are a part of your story, a story of courage, resilience, and faith. Embrace your scars, for they are reminders of what you have overcome and the growth you've experienced. They are not signs of defeat, but of victory, and they mark the journey of becoming who you were meant to be. Purpose is born from pain. Life has a way of bringing us face to face with challenges and struggles that seem overwhelming. At times, the pain we go through feels pointless, as though we're trapped in a cycle of suffering without any end in sight. But the truth is that purpose often emerges from these very experiences of pain. Rather than being a dead end, our suffering can be a powerful catalyst that shapes our destiny, teaches us invaluable lessons, and fuels a calling we never anticipated. When we allow God to work through our pain, it transforms us, molds us, and prepares us to make a unique impact in the world. Pain has a way of clarifying our values and priorities. When we're hurting, we're stripped of our illusions about what truly matters. Difficulties force us to reevaluate our goals, to look beyond surface level desires, and to search for a deeper sense of meaning. In the darkest times, we may find ourselves drawn to a calling that we never considered before. Pain can awaken us to new perspectives, giving us insight into needs and struggles we might have ignored. It's often in the midst of hardship that we begin to recognize the things we care about most deeply, and this awareness becomes the foundation for a purpose that is meaningful, resilient, and true. The journey from pain to purpose isn't instant, and it isn't easy. It's a process of allowing God to turn our struggles into strengths, our wounds into wisdom, and our heartbreak into healing for others. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but as we lean into God's love and guidance, we start to see the ways He's using our experiences to shape us. Our pain becomes a tool for empathy, enabling us to understand and support others in ways we never could have if we hadn't faced our own struggles. God often allows us to endure hardship so that we can grow in compassion and become sources of comfort for those who are suffering. When we look at the stories of individuals who have found profound purpose, we often see that their paths were marked by hardship. Take the example of Joseph in the Bible. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned. His life was filled with pain, yet each difficult experience was preparing him for his eventual role as a leader who would save his family and an entire nation from famine. Joseph's pain wasn't wasted. It was a crucial part of his preparation. Without those trials, he wouldn't have developed the resilience, humility, and wisdom he needed to fulfill his purpose. God used Joseph's pain to shape him into the person he needed to be, and through that pain, Joseph found his purpose. Similarly, our own lives are filled with moments of difficulty that are shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for something greater. The things that break our hearts or challenge our spirits may be the very things that ignite a sense of calling within us. When we go through pain, we begin to see gaps in the world, areas where there is a need for healing, justice, or kindness. Our struggles give us firsthand knowledge of what it means to suffer, and that understanding equips us to step into roles that can bring about real change. Purpose born from pain is often deeply rooted in compassion and empathy, which are among the most powerful motivators for making a difference. In our pain, we may also discover strengths we didn't know we had. When everything is easy, we don't always see what we're truly capable of. But in times of hardship, we find resilience, courage, and perseverance that we might never have tapped into otherwise. These qualities become part of the foundation for our purpose. Our scars, both visible and invisible, remind us of our strength and our capacity to endure. They become part of our story, one that can inspire others and show them that healing and hope are possible. Purpose doesn't require us to be perfect. It requires us to be willing to use what we've been through to make a difference. Furthermore, the purpose that emerges from pain is often a powerful force for positive change. It compels us to reach out, to help, to serve, and to love in ways we might never have imagined. The challenges we face can fuel our desire to create a better world, to advocate for those who are suffering, or to offer support where it's needed most. Our pain becomes a motivator, driving us to take action and to step into roles that align with God's plan for our lives. When we allow our pain to birth purpose, we move beyond self-centered goals and begin to live with a sense of mission that impacts not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us. Ultimately, purpose born from pain is one of the most meaningful forms of purpose we can have. It's a purpose that has been tested, refined, and deepened by real-life experience. It's a purpose that doesn't falter in the face of adversity because it knows what it's like to endure hardship and emerge stronger on the other side. God doesn't waste our pain. He uses it to build in us a purpose that is profound, enduring, and capable of transforming lives. Embracing this truth allows us to move forward, knowing that even the darkest parts of our story are part of something greater. Our pain becomes the soil in which our purpose is planted, and in time it bears fruit that blesses and inspires others. God uses broken people to reveal his strength. Throughout history, God has shown that his power shines most brightly through those who feel unworthy, flawed, or weak. He doesn't wait for people to be perfect or ready before he calls them. Rather, he works through them right in the middle of brokenness. This is because our weaknesses create space for God to reveal his strength in a way that goes beyond human limitations. When God works through our imperfections, it becomes clear that it's his power, not ours, at work. In our brokenness, his strength becomes our story. Consider some of the most powerful stories in Scripture. Moses was insecure about his speaking ability, feeling unfit to be a leader. Yet God called him to stand before Pharaoh and demand the freedom of the Israelites. Through Moses' weakness, God's strength was magnified, showing that it wasn't about Moses' eloquence, but about God's authority. Similarly, Gideon was filled with doubt and fear, yet God called him to lead a vastly outnumbered army. He reduced Gideon's forces not to weaken him, but to make sure it was evident that victory came through God's might alone. God chose unlikely people so that his strength would be unmistakable, leaving no room for human pride or credit. God's strength is made perfect in our weaknesses because it forces us to depend on him. When we face challenges that we know are beyond our abilities, we are more likely to lean on God, to seek his guidance, and to trust him fully. In this dependence, our faith deepens and our relationship with God becomes stronger. Brokenness reminds us of our limitations, but it also reminds us that God is limitless. It shows us that we don't have to have everything together to be used by him. Instead, our shortcomings allow us to witness his power in ways we might miss if we were relying solely on ourselves. This humility and trust create the conditions for God's strength to work through us powerfully. Brokenness also helps us to connect with others, showing them that God's strength is available to all. Not just the perfect. When people see us embracing our weaknesses and moving forward in faith, they are encouraged to believe that God can work through them as well. Our brokenness becomes a bridge, a way to show others that they don't have to wait until they're good enough for God to use them. It demonstrates that God delights in working through ordinary people with extraordinary flaws. When they see God's strength shining through our imperfections, they are reminded that his grace is for everyone and that no one is beyond his reach. Moreover, our brokenness allows God's strength to transform us from within. Sometimes we view brokenness as a flaw that needs fixing, but God uses it as an opportunity to remake us into something more than we can imagine. Through our weakness, we learn humility, patience, and a reliance on God that brings lasting transformation. Brokenness strips away our pride, making room for God to work within us, refining our character and aligning us more closely with his heart. As we allow God's strength to flow through our weaknesses, we begin to see a new purpose and calling emerge from places of pain and limitation. Through our brokenness, God's strength also becomes a testimony that encourages others. People are often more inspired by someone who has struggled, been honest about their flaws, and allowed God to work through them than by someone who appears to have it all together. Our willingness to let God use our weaknesses becomes a source of hope for others who may be struggling with similar issues. When we share our stories of how God worked through our brokenness, we demonstrate that His power is more than enough, even in the most challenging circumstances. We give others the courage to trust God with their own weaknesses, knowing that He can turn their greatest struggles into powerful testimonies. Furthermore, God's strength in our brokenness reminds us that our value is not based on our abilities or achievements, but on who we are in Him. When we allow God to work through us despite our flaws, we are reminded that our worth is found in His love and grace. It's not about how strong, capable, or accomplished we are. It's about our willingness to let God's strength move through us. Brokenness humbles us and teaches us to find our identity in God rather than in our own efforts. In doing so, we come to understand that God's love for us is unconditional and that His strength is made perfect in our weakness. Ultimately, God uses broken people to reveal His strength because it brings Him glory. When others see us accomplishing things we could never do on our own, they see the evidence of God's presence and power in our lives. Our weaknesses point to His greatness. It's through our brokenness that God's strength is most evident, showing the world that He is real, that He is powerful, and that He cares about each of us personally. When we allow our brokenness to become a vessel for God's strength, we not only fulfill our purpose, but also become living testimonies of His grace and love. In every story of a broken person used by God, we see the pattern repeated weakness becomes the platform for God's strength, brokenness the canvas on which He paints His masterpiece. When we accept this truth, we stop hiding our scars and start embracing them, knowing that God's strength shines brightest through the cracks. In the end, our brokenness is not a barrier. It's the very thing that draws us closer to God and reveals His power in ways that perfection never could. When we look back at all the scars, struggles, and setbacks, we see not just evidence of pain, but a map of the places where God met us, carried us, and worked through us. We see that God chooses to use the broken, not in spite of their flaws, but because of them. Our journeys, filled with ups and downs, disappointments and triumphs, are precisely what equip us to fulfill His purpose. Through our pain, He births purpose. Through our scars, He builds strength. Through our weaknesses, He displays His grace. And through our stories, He shows the world that His love reaches into every corner of our lives, healing and transforming what we thought was beyond repair. Let us be willing to embrace our brokenness, trusting that God doesn't require us to be whole to be used, just willing. Let us wear our scars as marks of resilience and hope, allowing them to serve as testimonies of His faithfulness. Let us walk forward, knowing that our struggles are not for nothing. They are shaping us, equipping us, and preparing us for a purpose that only we can fulfill. In God's hands, our brokenness becomes the foundation of a story far greater than we could have imagined. So we stand not as defeated, but as living proof that God's strength shines brightest through broken people. No excuses. God doesn't ask for perfection, and He doesn't demand that we have it all figured out. He simply asks for our willingness, our openness, and our faith to step forward despite our flaws and fears. We can't let our insecurities or past mistakes hold us back. They're not reasons to sit on the sidelines. They're reasons to rise and let God work through us. Excuses may feel like shields, but in truth, they keep us from seeing what God can do in and through us. When we say, I'm not ready, I'm too broken, or I'm not enough, we're telling God that our limitations are greater than His power. But God has a track record of using imperfect people to accomplish extraordinary things. The only thing that can keep us from fulfilling His purpose is our refusal to try. We must stop looking at what we lack and start trusting what He provides. No more waiting for the right time or the perfect circumstances. We are called now just as we are. When we embrace that, when we lay aside our excuses, we open ourselves to a journey of growth, purpose, and strength. So let's let go of the I can tease and what ifs and choose to believe in the God who turns brokenness into beauty. No excuses, just faith, surrender, and the courage to take the first step.
Our thought actions unlimited the way you speak positions you still you are not you are planting the seeds in emulates that will grow into be belief of afflictions serve as a remember control of your mindset and they help you replace self-doubt. You to the words you speak to in the quiet moment are like the passing to the credit set the tone for and you approach you that too often allow is influencer the it dictate your mindset you when you affirm your word you state you are actively rejected the negativity holds over than and more you affirm your positions the more actions align it become a secure one affirmations remember affirmation think that they are about align you and you with you visions when you speak life into your own life.